اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين علي حجة الله.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى محمد.
حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة
حي على الصلاة
حي على الفلاح
حي على الفلاح
حي على الفلاح
حي على الفلاح
حي على خير العمل
حي على خير العمل
حي على خير العمل
حي على خير العمل.
الله أكبر الله أكبر
الله أكبر الله أكبر جل جلاله.
لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله وحده
لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله وحده.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم اجعل قلبي بارا وأملي سارا وعيشي كارا ورزقي دارا وأولادي أبرارا واجعل لي عند قبر نبيك محمد مصطفى صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم مستقرا وقرارا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
اللهم صل على محمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. صلى الله عليه وسلم. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. صلى الله عليه وسلم. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين علي ولي الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين علي وأولاده المعصومين بالحق حجج الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. فاطر عظمة الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم اغنني بحلالك عن حرامك وبطاعتك عن معصيتك وبفضلك عن من سواك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته يقوم وقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. وعجل فرجهم واحشرنا معهم ولنا عداهم. يا لطيف يا كريم ارحم عبدك الضعيف الضليل. يا الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله وخير الأسماء لله. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته في أمته وارفع درجته. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا من أرجوح لكل خير ومن سخطه إن كل شر. يا من يعطي الكثير بالقليل. يا من يعطي من سأله. يا من يعطي من لم يسأله ومن لم يعرفه تحنن منه ورحمة. أعتني بمسألتي إياك جميع خير الدنيا وجميع خير الآخرة، واصرف عني بمسألتي إياك جميع شر الدنيا وشر الآخرة، فإنه غير منقوص ما أعطيت، وزدني من فضلك يا كريم يا ذا الجلال والإكرام، يا ذا النعماء والجود، يا ذا المن والجود، حرم شيبتي على النار.
الله أكبر الله أكبر، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله، أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله، أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا وأولاده المعصومين بالحق حجج الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. وجهت وجهي للذي فطر رسول الله أعظم الضمور. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم اغنني بحلالك عن حرامك وبطاعتك عن معصيتك وبفضلك عمن سواك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم واحشرنا معهم ولنا أعداهم. يا لطيف يا كريم ارحم عبدك الضعيف الذليل. يا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله وخير الأسماء لله. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته في أمته وارفع درجته. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
لا إله إلا الله.
الله صل على
محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا من أرجوح لكل خير وآمن سخطه إن كل شر. يا من يؤتي الكثير بالقليل. يا من يؤتي من سأله. يا من يؤتي من لم يسله ومن لم يعرفه تحنن منه ورحمة. أعطني مسألتي إياك جميع خير الدنيا وجميع خير الآخرة، واصرف عني مسألتي إياك جميع شر الدنيا وشر الآخرة، فإنه غير منقوص ما عاتيت. وزدني من فضلك يا كريم يا ذو الجلال والإكرام.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعما إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. پردیس میں زہر سے مارا ہے نقی کو، پردیس میں زہر سے مارا ہے نقی کو، جس طرح اس سے پہلے، جس طرح اس سے پہلے رضا اور تقی کو، پردیس میں زہر سے مارا ہے نقی کو، 6 سال عمر تھی کہ ہوئے باپ سے جدا، 6 سال عمر تھی کہ ہوئے باپ سے جدا، ظالم نے کم سنی میں، ظالم نے کم سنی میں رکھا قید نقی کو، پردیس میں زہر سے مارا ہے نقی کو، پردیس میں زہر سے مارا ہے نقی کو، معصوم کو لعینوں نے بلایا عراق میں، معصوم کو لعینوں نے بلایا عراق میں، پھر تو کہ سلاسل میں، پھر تو کہ سلاسل میں رکھا مولا نقی کو، پردیس میں زہر سے مارا ہے نقی کو، پردیس میں زہر سے مارا ہے نقی کو، ہائے ہائے یتیم سا میرا میں چھوڑ کر گیا، ہائے ہائے یتیم سا میرا میں چھوڑ کر گئے، خود عسکری نے غسل، خود عسکری نے غسل دیا بابا نقی کو، پردیس میں زہر سے مارا ہے نقی کو، پردیس میں زہر سے مارا ہے نقی کو، عشرت کا وہ کلام عطا کیجئے امام، عشرت کا وہ کلام عطا کیجئے امام، سامر آجا کے پیش، سامر آجا کے پیش करे खुद वो नकी को, परदेस में जहर से मारा है नकी को। जिस तरह इससे पहले रज़ा और तकी को, परदेस में जहर से मारा है नकी को। पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलवात।
ما شاء الله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني الهاشمي الذي سمي في السماوات بأحمد وفي الأراضين بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الهداة المهديين، سيما أولهم أمير المؤمنين وآخرهم بقية الله في الأراضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وقتلتهم وغاصب حقوقهم ومنكري فضائلهم ملعونين. أما بعد, for the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziyah, for the enlightenment of the graves of your marhumin, of the graves of the Shahadat, Ulama and Siddiqeen, for the safety of the followers of Ahl al-Bayt around the world, and for the safety and the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullah al-A'zam Arwahun al-Fida, please recite your loudest salawat. All praise due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is Rahman and the one who is Rahim. The holy month of Rajab has begun for us, a month which is the preparation towards the spiritual peak of the believer. That spiritual peak being Layal al-Qadr, those nights of Qadr, where you will write your destiny for the coming year. But you will only be able to conquer the night of Qadr, or understand the night of Qadr, or receive the rizq that is hidden in the night of Qadr, if the preparation for that night has begun now. Often throughout our lives, the holy month of Rajab signals for us the start of our dread, that the holy month of Ramadan is coming. And as it goes on and we reach the holy month of Sha'ban, then that dread begins to increase until we reach the night before, and then we're trying as hard as we can to make sure that tomorrow is not the holy month of Ramadan. And we're starting to getting into our moon wars and all sorts, just because I don't want to fast. And that itself comes back to another spiritual disease, which is outside the remit of this lecture. But the fact is that we have an opportunity to write our destiny in this period at least 4 times. Once being the 15th of Sha'ban, Laylatul Bara'ah, which is a draft. Sayyid ibn Tawus, he consolidates and he explains, how is it possible that Laylatul Qadr, your destiny is being written, and then again 15th of Sha'ban, before it, destiny is being written. He says that the destiny that is written on the 15th of Sha'ban is a draft written in Loh Mahv wal Ithbat, the erasable tablet. But the destiny, then you are monitored from the 15th of Sha'ban until Layal al-Qadr. Then on the 19th, again there are narrations. 19th, another draft is written. 21st, that is rubber stamp. 23rd, it is finalized as to what your destiny is to be for the year. So from this point until the 15th of Sha'ban, I need to analyze my spiritual growth and my journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it cannot be the case that there's previous years that I enter the holy month of Ramadan exactly the same, or I enter the nights of Qadr with the same spiritual defects and character flaws within myself that stop me from achieving the heights and that rizq that is hidden within the night of Qadr. Because from amongst those, that is the very least that one can try and achieve on the night of Qadr is some sort of ma'rifah of Fatima Zahra. She is one of the linchpins of the night of Qadr. And this is why the 6th Imam says that Man arafa Fatima hakka ma'rifatiha faqad adraka laylatul Qadr. The night of Qadr cannot be successfully completed without the ma'rifah of Fatima Zahra. Those that do not have that wilayah, those that do not have that wilayah within their hearts, they can never achieve that which is hidden in the nights of Qadr. But in order to unlock that which is hidden, I have to begin now. Our Imam embarks upon a 3-month spiritual exercise to be able to receive that which he receives in the night of Qadr. Then how is it that I end up? And that's why when we get to the night of Qadr, people are there and they're lackadaisical about it. They're looking at I ask me to sit amongst my friends until the time of Fajr, no problem. But ask me to sit and pray, now that's a problem. Now I'm going to try and look for somewhere where I can stretch out my legs. I'll find a wall that I can lean against, not obviously talk to my elders, but talk to the youngsters. Find a wall that I can lean against because, oh God, this worship is so hard. And so I miss out on that divine glory. I'm there trying to make my destiny for the coming year, and I've got one leg stretched out, leaning against the wall. Bika ya Allah, bika ya Allah. You think Allah's going to give me? The only way that I can achieve the secrets that are hidden in the nights of Qadr is if I begin to that journey, that spiritual program now. The Urafah would bring it from the previous night of Qadr. Sayyid ibn Tawus says, from the moment that the night of Qadr ends, I begin my preparation for next year's Laylatul Qadr. Every day increasing in the worship. The least that we can do in this month is fast. Says the one that fasts 7 days in this month, the 7 doors of hell will be closed for that individual. The one who fasts 8 days in this month, the 8 doors of heaven will open for him. It is recommended that every day, 70 times at least, I do istighfar. 100 times a day, I do the dhikr of La ilaha illallah. Or try at least within this month to complete at least once 1,000 La ilaha illallah. So that I'm able to unlock the specific rizq of these months. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has hidden certain realities within these months, realities that will need to be opened by me, but they can only be opened when the heart is pure. See, the heart is the connection to the unseen realm. القلب يتردد بين الملك والملكوت. Your heart is that connecting factor. It's that revolving door between the mulk and the malakut, to the angelic realms. If this heart is not pure, it is not cleaned, then those rays of divine mercy that are shining in these months, I won't be able to benefit from them. I'll always be deficient. And then year in and year out, the night of Qadr will come, but I won't ascend. And that's why the night of Qadr goes, and truly between myself and Allah, ask myself the question, that from last Laylatul Qadr, what did I gain? What is it Allah gave me? What is it that I asked for? What spiritual maqam did I achieve? And did I change my life from the last Laylatul Qadr? That I can say, yes, last Laylatul Qadr, Allah gave me the rizq of this, and I have continued to benefit from it throughout this year. But if I can't, then that means I wasn't tuned into the frequency. If I didn't feel that tanazzulul malaika, I didn't feel that salam hiya hatta matla'il fajr, then it means I was out of tune with that frequency. Alongside the worship, we have one other way of reaching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of purifying this heart. And that is the wasila of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. These ayyam that we have, these istishhad, days of shahada, these days of wilada, these all have their own specific rizq attached to them. Don't think of it just as another cultural event that I need to go to and attend. No, there is a ma'nawi rizq that is associated to each of these individuals whom you come to commemorate and remember. And don't leave the gathering without asking for the specific rizq of that night from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Urafah, they speak about it. They say, there is a very specific rizq that is given to you in these majalis, especially around the nights of the birth or the shahadat of the Imams. Because the very nature of the universe alters. Because all of existence mourns. Everything is cognizant except the best of creation. Everything is in a state of worship of Allah. يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Everything except the one that He created as the best of His creations. Because I have the ability to rise above the angels or become worse than the animals. This ability does not exist in anything else in existence. The angels, the jinns, the animals, none of them have this ability to ascend or descend. Only the human being. And so holding on to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, one can help reach Allah. And today, we remember one of those individuals, the Imam that is known as Imam al-Hadi salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And you should know this, that the names of Ahlul Bayt are not just names. Like our names. Our names are just labels that are attached to a bag of flesh. But their names have a specific link to the ma'muriyat, to the command, to the particular job that they have within existence. It is an indication towards that particular role that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them. Please recite salawat. It's an attachment and an indication towards that specific role that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them in this world. Why is Fatima named Fatima? So that her Shi'as will forever be removed from the fire of hell, and her enemies shall forever be removed from having her love and her ma'rifah. Every Imam's name and title is an indication towards something, a particular role that they played in their time. And Imam al-Hadi is no different. Hadi, the guide. And we'll see that it was a time of great turmoil for the Shi'as during the time of Imam al-Hadi. There were many inhirafat, many deviancies that had manifest. And it was this divine light of Imam al-Hadi that steered the Shi'as through this dark period. You know that the Imam alayhi salam lived through the lives of 7 of the Abbasid Khalifas. Starting from the time of Ma'mun, Mu'tasim, then Wathiq, then Mutawakkil was, during his period, the Imam lived the longest. It was the longest rule. Then Muntasir, his son, and then Musta'in and Mu'taz, who eventually then killed the Imam. And at each of these individuals, with the exception of the son of Mutawakkil, they were looking at more and more innovative ways to oppress Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and specifically Imam al-Hadi. Different ways of causing psychological, emotional distress to the Imam. But the Imam had to guide his Shi'as through this. And I want to look at 4 different aspects from the life of the Imam that stand out, that were some of the things that had not been done before in that particular manner. The first is that the Imam alayhi salam in this time of turmoil was at the forefront of the defense of the wilaya of Ahlul Bayt, and specifically the wilaya of Amirul Mu'mineen. Because the Imam was in a very unique position. Though the Imam himself and Imam al-Jawad and Imam al-Askari, though all 3 of them were highly oppressed, but the Shi'as were very strong because of the position that Imam al-Radha alayhi salam was given. Because of that position, Imam was able to openly talk about matters regarding tashayyuh, matters regarding wilaya, and really raise the Shi'as, help the Shi'as. And now, so when it comes to the time of Imam al-Hadi, there are huge colonies of Shi'as in Nayshabur, in Bayhaq, in Sistan, in all these various provinces. And they're not just small, they're huge, economically strong communities. So though the Imam was oppressed, the Shi'as were now very well established in all throughout the Islamic empire. But the Imam, in order to guide them, because of the deviancies that were coming, the Imam was now in a position where he could openly defend the wilaya. And he did that through 3 very key ziyarat from the Imam. The first is Ziyarat Jami'a Kabira. Many of you will associate Ziyarat Jami'a Kabira to the Haram of Imam al-Radha. But it is recommended to be recited at every single one of the harams of the Imams. This is a ziyarah that explains the wilaya of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam to a T. And even then, it is not the peak of Ahlul Bayt. It is what we can bear. Otherwise, Ali Muhammad are far greater than that. But because Imam al-Radha was able to raise the community to a level, now Imam al-Hadi could reveal these secrets of Imamat to the extent that the human being could bear. And we can go, I did a whole Ashra Muharram on just Ziyarat Jami'a Kabira, and still I only passed the first 2 pages. Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli has been writing a tafsir on it. It's over 20 volumes on Ziyarat Jamia Kabira. Those of you that haven't read it, especially in these days of where people are questioning the Imam this, can the Imam do that, this, go read that. The words of Imam al-Hadi himself. And see how he explains that wilayah. See how he explains the maqam of Ahl al-Bayt. One of the lines in there, he says that وَعَادَتُكُمُ الْإِحْسَانِ وَسَجِّيَّتُكُ الْكَرَمِ, says that your very nature or your habits are generosity. عَادَتُكُمُ الْإِحْسَانِ, your habit is to be generous, O Ali Muhammad. وَسَجِّيَّتُكُمُ الْكَرَمِ, and your habits are to be generous. Your nature, your very nature is to be generous. When you look at the life of Imam al-Hadi, this is really manifest. In the life of all of the Imams, you can go by one, but it's the night of the Shahadat of the Imam. You look at the life of the Imam and his ihsan, because the ihsan of Ahl al-Bayt isn't just reserved for their Shi'as. Their ihsan, their good, spreads throughout all of existence. Everything in existence benefits from the presence of the Imam. بِيُمْنِهِ رَزَقَ الْوَرَى وَبِوُجُودِهِ ثَبَتَتِ الْأَرْضُ وَالسَّمَاءِ. It is through his existence that the dunya is given its rizq. It is through his existence exist the heavens and the earth. لَوْلَا حُجَّةً لَسَاخَتِ الْأَرْضُ بِأَهْلِهَا. That if it were not for the hujjah of Allah being alive, the earth would collapse in on its existence. The very wujud is ihsan upon us. We exist because they exist. It extends throughout all of creation. Everything is taking from the faith that Ali Muhammad received from Allah. I want to give you 3 stories from the life of Imam al-Hadi, where this ihsan of the Imam was there. I said that the ihsan of the Imam reaches everyone, Muslim, non-Muslim. Yunus ibn Ya'qub is a Christian who lives in Baghdad. And this is during the time of Mutawakkil. Mutawakkil sends a letter and summons Yunus ibn Ya'qub to Samarra. Now when Mutawakkil calls you and orders you to come, there's only 2 things that can happen. Either you're dying or you're going to jail. He was the worst of Bani al-Abbas. The worst of all of them. When he calls you, either you are going to die or you're going to jail. Yunus ibn Ya'qub receives this summons. Thinks, what do I do? He had a Shia neighbor that would always talk to him about Imam al-Hadi. He went to visit him. He says, listen, this Imam al-Hadi of yours, do you think if I did another to him, if I said that I will give some money to him, that he would help me, the barakah of his existence would save me from the shar, from the evil of Mutawakkil? This man says, yes, of course. So he makes the niyyah. He says, I'm going to do another of 100 dinar to Imam al-Hadi. And he sets out for Samarra. When he reaches Samarra, he says to himself, you know what? It's probably better I go and I give this to Imam al-Hadi first. Although it's recommended that when you do another, when you make a promise of any sort that if this happens, I'll do this, wait till it happens, then go in, give it. But he says, you know what? I'll go and give it before. So he says, but I don't know where the Imam is, where he lives in this city. So he says, I was just riding around on my horse aimlessly when all of a sudden my horse stopped outside a house. Says, when it stopped, the door of that house opened and a man came out, said, Yunus ibn Ya'qub, we have been awaiting you. Come inside. He says, 2 signs. My horse stopped and this man addressed me by my name. So he says that he goes inside the house. The servant turns to him and says, Yunus ibn Yaqub, you have 100 dinar that you have given as nadhar to Imam al-Hadi. Give them to me. So he gives him the 100 dinar. And then he says, go inside that room, Imam al-Hadi will see you. Yunus ibn Yaqub goes inside and he meets the Imam. Imam, seeing him, says to him, Yunus ibn Yaqub, people think that we Ali Muhammad are only for our Shi'as. Our ihsan extends to all Shia and non-Shia. Go, Mutawakkil will leave you. He has no specific work with you. You will return safely back to your home. Yunus ibn Yaqub leaves, goes to Mutawakkil. Mutawakkil has whatever words and sends him away. He was a Christian. He died a Christian. Yunus ibn Yaqub doesn't become Shia. He dies a Christian. But yes, one of his sons becomes a Shia. One of his sons. Ali Muhammad are like that. Imam Sajjad says on the day of Ashura, my father spared many individuals in Karbala because he saw that there was a mu'min in their line. They themselves may not, but the effects of this are far-reaching. The second, a man by the name of Abdul Rahman. He lived in the city of Isfahan. And Isfahan, even after Imam al-Rada, was a mostly Sunni area. But he was the one Shia amongst them. The people would come and say to him that, Abdul Rahman, why are you a Shia? He says, let me tell you a story as to what happened. He says that I was crippled by debts. I didn't know where to go. I had no one to turn to. He says, I made the intention that I'm going to go to Mutawakkil Abbasi Mal'un and ask him to help me. I've got no one else to go to. So he says, I made my way from Isfahan towards Samarra. When I reached the city of Samarra, there was a huge crowd of people. He says that I asked them, what's going on? They said, oh, the Imam of the Rafidis, Ibn al-Rida, is being brought. You know, because Imam al-Rida was so prominent, that all of the latter Imams were referred to as Ibn al-Rida, the sons of Rida, the son of Rida. Hatta even in some of our riwayat, the Imam of our time is also referred to as Ibn al-Rida. So he says, Ibn al-Rida is coming. So he says, I stood there. I wasn't a Rafidi. I had no attraction to any of these Shia. I just stood there. I thought, let me see, all these people are coming out to see him. Let me just stand there. So he says that I waited, and soon I saw that a man was being brought in on a horse or a camel, and he wasn't looking left or right. It says, when I saw him, فَوَقَعَ حُبُّهُ عَلَى قَلْبِهِ مِنْ قَلْبِهِ. Says that when I saw him, says that his love entered my heart. So much nur on his face. Says, and I said to myself, and I prayed to Allah in my heart, Ya Allah, save this man from the shar of Mutawakkil. He looks like he is someone of great piety. He says, truly my heart broke for him. And I said to Allah, Ya Allah, save him from the shar of Mutawakkil. Says, as his horse or his camel passed me, says he stopped for a moment. He looked straight at me. He says, Ya Abdul Rahman, Allah has accepted your dua. Know that no harm will come to me. Says, but Abdul Rahman, let me tell you something. Go back. Allah will give you 3 things as a result of your dua for me. Some say, can we do dua for the Imam? Why is it that we need to give sadaqah for Imam al-Zaman? Why is it that we pray for the safety of Imam al-Zaman? It's not that they need it. It is that we need it. He did with a pure heart for the safety of the Imam. Wasn't even a Shia. Imam says to him, you did dua for me, know that Allah will give you 3 things. Leave here, you no longer need to be here. Says the first thing that Allah will give you is lots of wealth. The second is He will give you many children. And the third is He will give you a very long life. Abdul Rahman is telling this story in Isfahan. He says, today you open any room in my house, you will find it filled with dinar. He says, Allah gave me 10 sons, each better than the other. And I am over 70 years old now. Imam al-Hadi has already died and I've never once been ill in my life. Says, you ask me why I'm Shia? This is because of the dua of Imam al-Hadi. The third individual is talking about the ihsan. Adatukum al-ihsan. O Ali Muhammad, your very habits are the ones of generosity, of doing good. You can't help but do good. The third is Mutawakkil Abbasi Mal'un himself. The narration says that Mutawakkil got a boil on his back. He was in so much pain. He wouldn't let a doctor near him. He couldn't lay down. He couldn't sit. He was just constantly in pain. No one could solve this issue. The mother of Mutawakkil does 1,000 dinar nadhar to Imam al-Hadi. She comes to Imam al-Hadi, she gives him 1,000 dinar. She says, my son Mutawakkil is in so much pain. Imam al-Hadi gives them the solution. They go and Mutawakkil is cured. Adatukum al-ihsan. Even towards their enemies, they did ihsan. Even towards those that wished them ill, they did ihsan. In the hope that maybe, just maybe, one of them would come towards this truth. Maybe, just maybe, one of them would be guided. But at times it comes a point where you push the wali of Allah, you push the wali of Allah. Then, when the wali of Allah decides to do a dua, it ends everything. Mutawakkil was always thinking of ways to try and demean Imam al-Hadi. One time he said, you know what, I'm going to ride on my horse and I want him to be walked behind me barefoot. They said, Mutawakkil, you know, this is too much. People will begin to question. So he says to his advisor, what do you advise? He says, call all of your other soldiers, your generals, the ministers, get them to walk, but also make Ali al-Naqi walk as well. So he says, fine. So they say they dragged the Imam from the house and they brought him. Mutawakkil on his horse riding, and the Imam is being forced to walk behind him. And there are 3 or 4 incidents from different perspectives of individuals in that gathering that are related to what the Imam said. Says that there was one individual who was a slave of Mutawakkil. He was a slave of Mutawakkil. He says, when I saw that Imam al-Hadi was being forced out in this heat and he was being made to walk, he says, I wasn't a Shia, but in my heart, I felt bad for him. And he says, I made the intention. I said, you know what? If I get a chance, I'm just going to kill Mutawakkil now. Says, as soon as I made that intention, Imam al-Hadi looked towards me. Said, don't do what you are intending. In 3 days, this problem will be finished. Says, I didn't understand. The second individual, one of the generals of Mutawakkil, he says that after all of this parade had finished, he said, I saw Imam al-Hadi sitting in the corner out of breath. He says, I looked over to him and there was sweat on his forehead from being forced to walk for so long in this heat. So all I did is take a handkerchief and wipe away the sweat from the forehead of Imam al-Hadi. Says Imam al-Hadi looked towards me and he said, see, look, A'adatukum al-ihsan. This is someone who is a general of mutawakkil. What has he done? Just wiped away the sweat from the head of Imam al-Hadi. Imam al-Hadi looks towards him, says, you have 3 days. Gather all of your wealth today and stay in your home for 3 days. Do not come out. For this shar will end. This evil will end. That he does not understand our maqam, and so now he will understand. This man says, I didn't. What was he talking about? So he says, I had a friend, a Rafidi, who was a teacher as well, a scholar. Just as I went to him, I said, listen, your Imam, this is what happened. I wiped his head. This is what he said to me. What does it mean? He says that, listen to what he has said to you. It must mean that mutawakkil is about to be finished. He says, I became angry. How dare you speak about mutawakkil like this? And I stormed out. He says, I went home, but curiosity got the better of me. So he says, I still went and I gathered all the little bits of wealth that I had in the palace, different places I stored, and I brought it to my home, food, everything in my house, and I sat for 3 days. The 3rd day passed. On the night of the 4th, the son of Mutawakkil, because of what Mutawakkil had done to Imam al-Hadi, made him walk throughout the streets, had embarrassed him and tried to shame him, Muntasir goes and he kills Mutawakkil in his sleep. Chops him to bits, his own father. When the hujjah of Allah is pushed. But the default state is ihsan. And Ziyarat Jamia Kabira, those of you that haven't read it, I would urge you, go read it. See what it is that the Imam says in there. That was the first thing that the Imam used to defend wilayah. The second thing is the ziyarah of the day of Ghadir of Imam al-Hadi. This ziyarah is when Imam al-Hadi, in the earlier times of his imamate, when Mu'tasim forces the Imam to come to Iraq, because Mutawakkil made the Imam move to Samarra permanently, but Mu'tasim would order the Imam to come. In one of these visits to Iraq, it was the day of Ghadir. So the Imam requested the soldiers that let us go to Najaf and stand by the grave of Amir al-Mu'mineen. I want to do ziyarah. These soldiers allowed. Now you read this ziyarah of Ghadir from Imam al-Hadi. Every single ayah that was revealed in the sha'an of Amir al-Mu'mineen, in the praise of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Hadi has it in there. You read it, what it is. La'an upon those that oppressed Amir al-Mu'mineen. La'an upon those that took away his haqq. With who? Surrounded by the guards of the Khalifa. So many different lines in there. It says, Assalamu alayki ya deen Allah al-Qawim. Salams be upon you, O the religion, the true religion of Allah. He's addressing Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Hadi. Ya deen Allah al-Qawim. The true religion of Allah. وَالصِّرَاطُهُ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ, and his straight path are you, Ya Ali. And then later on in it, he says, وَأَوْجَبَ عَلَىٰ أُمَّتِي فَرَضَ طَاعَتِكَ وَوِلَايَتِكَ وَأَقَدَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْبَيْعَةَ لَكَ. Says, and Allah made your obedience and loyalty wajib upon this ummah, and ordered them to do bay'ah towards you. And then he says, جَعَلَكَ أَوْلَى بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ كَمَا جَعَلَهُ اللَّهُ كَذَلِكَ. Says, and Allah made you. It's the ayah of the Holy Quran in reference to whom? The Holy Prophet. Says, and Allah made you more a priority over the believers than their own selves, in the same way that he gave this same maqam to the Prophet of Allah. Imam al-Hadi, the defender of wilayah. If you haven't read the Ziyarat of Ghadir of Imam al-Hadi, go pick it up tonight. Read how it is that the Imam, and then all these people will say, oh, Imam can't do this, Imams don't have this. Then you'll see from the words of another Ma'soom Imam, there is no ishkal in the sanad. There is no problem with the sanad of any of these. All of them directly relayed by Imam al-Hadi, recited by Imam al-Hadi. The third is ziyarah that Sheikh Kulaini brings, and also Sheikh Abbas Qummi brings in Mufatih. It's a very short ziyarah, I think ziyarah 2 or 3 of Mufatih al-Jinan for Amir al-Mu'mineen. And this is the first time that Amir al-Mu'mineen is addressed in such a way. It says, Assalamu alayka ya wali Allah, anta awwalu madhloom. Anta awwalu madhloom, wa awwalu man ghasiba haqquh. You are the first oppressed, and the first whose right was taken away. Imam al-Hadi in every opportunity was defending wilayah in a way that none of the other A'imma alayhimus salam could, because of their situation. But now Imam al-Hadi was openly saying these things because the people were ready. So the first point, Imam al-Hadi, defender of wilayah. The second point from the life of Imam al-Hadi is that when Imam al-Hadi was brought to Samara by Mutawakkil Mal'un, his connection with the rest of the Shias, his followers, was totally cut. And he only had a short period where he could train individuals. And so this is why the Imam has 185 companions that history narrates, 185 individuals that he trained. And then what he did with these individuals, having been brought to Samarra, was send them to strategic places within the Muslim Ummah so that they could be a point of contact and a point of ruju' for the people. Those Shi'as that needed their questions answered, they would come to this. I.e., the Imam started the system of wikalat. It was started from time of Imam al-Sadiq and earlier. Imam al-Sadiq is telling Zurara, he's saying that sit in the majlis, give fatwas to the people. But now at the time of Imam al-Hadi, now this is really taking a hold. And so Imam has all of these different things. Sayyid Abdul Azim Hassani, who's buried in Tehran, was one of those companions of Imam, one of those individuals that when a group came from Ray to Imam al-Hadi to ask him questions, said, what do we do? He says, why have you come here? Go to Sayyid Abdul Azim Hassani. He is there. Go and ask him. You have many others. Ibrahim ibn Hashim al-Kummi, Ali ibn Ibrahim al-Kummi, who himself is the author of 15 books, narrator of 7,000 hadith that appear in our books of hadith. Many of them were there. Ali ibn Mahziyan in Ahmad, Fadl ibn Sha'adhan in Nayshabur. So this whole system of wikalat was there. So the second thing Imam al-Hadi did was really give strength to this system of representatives, or what we'd call an early rendition of the system of marja'iyah. The third thing that Imam al-Hadi did was take head on the deviancies that were happening in his time. And there were many, not outside of the Muslim world, within the Shi'as themselves. And that's why, and many of these resurface in amongst modern day as well. You know, people regurgitate old mas'alas, old things, try and bring them in, try and give them a new flavor, but these things have already been discussed, if not hundreds, thousands of years ago. So Imam al-Hadi was tackling these deviancies. The deviancy of the Sufi sect that had grown. They had created qutubs and various tariqas amongst themselves. And Imam al-Hadi was standing against it saying, this isn't it, follow the scholars. What is this? That whoever stands up and decides to become a spiritual guide, then when he dies, then there becomes a whole tariqah after him. You see in Tasawwuf, in the Sufis, you have the Bektashis and you have these and that. Different people because of a particular peer or a particular person, spiritual guide they followed. This is outside of Islam. Imam al-Hadi took this on head on. The second was the ghullat, those that were attributing godly or equality with God to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And they'd been around a long time. But now Imam al-Hadi was openly called. In fact, for at least 2 or 3 of the ghalis, of these people from the ghullat, Imam al-Hadi said, they're wajib al-qatl. Kill them. Those that believe that they are on the same level as Allah. Those that believe that Ahlul Bayt manifest all of their fada'il bidhat from their own essence. The ghalis. They receive everything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they were taking hold in the time of Imam al-Hadi. The people of predestination and free will amongst the Shi'as of Ahwaz. This was a major problem. That are we forced? Or has God just left us to our own devices? And there is a beautiful letter that Imam al-Hadi writes to the people of Ahwaz, to his representative, dispelling and explaining this concept of predestination and free will. And those that are interested in the book Tuhf al-Uqul, it is brought in there. The whole letter. And Imam al-Hadi is quoting Imam al-Sadiq, what Imam al-Sadiq said in this regard, and then he adds his own addition to it. So there was this. And then there was the group of individuals that said, God has a body. Shi'as. God has a body. Or can be seen. And so Imam al-Hadi again took these people head on. Dispelled these deviancies. And so many of these things that regurgitate, take different forms, come with different names in our times. A'immah alayhimus salam answered many of them. If not all. We just need to be there to dig it up. And then the fourth and final thing that Imam al-Hadi did was that he is the grandfather of the Imam of our time. And so he prepared more so the people for the coming of the ghayba. In Ziyarat Jami'a Kabira there are many references to intidhar, to ghayb, talking about the dawla of Ahlul Bayt, that will be the government that you will establish. He was preparing the minds of the people. This system of wikalat, that if you can't reach your Imam, even though he may be alive, but he's imprisoned in Samarra. Samarra was nothing less than a prison. It was a military garrison. And that's why the 2 Imams are known as Al-Asqaliyain, those that are from inside the Askar, the garrison. And so the Imams were constantly watched. 20 years Imam al-Hadi, and then the whole of the life of Imam al-Askari, except for the 1 year or so that he was in Medina. Constantly under watch, living inside a military garrison. So it was as if they were in ghayba for the Shi'as. So the system of wikalat was preparing the minds of the Imam. In fact, the first na'ib of Imam Zaman is one of the wakils of the 10th Imam. The first na'ib of the Imam is the wakil of the 10th Imam. And then multiple riwayat that the Imam had talking about the ghayba of the Imam and preparing the Shi'as for the time that was to come. Those 4 points from the life of Imam al-Hadi. And this is the night where we offer our condolences to the Imam of our time. Because this is the grandfather of our Imam. We give our condolences to Imam Sahib al-Zaman for the oppression that befell his grandfather. Poison is one thing. Being killed is one thing. But Ali Muhammad were forced to face throughout their lives different types of emotional distress. before even their deaths. And at times these emotional distresses are far greater, are a greater musibah for us to shed tears on. You look at the day after Fatima al-Zahra was buried, and the Muslims came to Baqi and they said, we're going to exhume all of these graves to find the grave of the body of Fatima so that we can recite Salatul Mayyit over us. And Amirul Mu'mineen came running out from the house wearing his yellow Aba Zulfiqar in his hand. He said, any one of you moves a single stone in Baqi, you will see me, Ali, remove all of your heads from the body. Said that Ali's eyes were red with rage on that day. One old man amongst them said, return, I remember Rasulullah saying that be wary of that day when Abu Hassan will wear his yellow Aba and stand by the broken wall. Says, leave it. But this was pain for Ali Muhammad. Being placed in polluted environments. In the middle of the night, around the time of the Salat Tahajjud of the Imam, they come and they burst through the house of the Imam and they drag Imam al-Hadi to a gathering of alcohol where Mutawakkil is there with his ministers drinking alcohol. And they're forcing the Imam to sit amongst them. And Mutawakkil is offering the Imam alcohol, saying, drink. And the Imam says, this is beneath us, we don't do anything. They say, okay, recite poetry for us. The Imam tries to push away. They say, no, recite. And the Imam recites 2 lines for them, talking about the dunya and how previous nations and mountains have crumbled. Mutawakkil, understanding, he puts down the alcohol. He says, send him back home. Ya Imam al-Hadi, they placed you in the gathering of alcohol. But I know of another Ali that was taken to a gathering of alcohol. Imam al-Hadi, you were alone while they were drinking alcohol around you. But I know of another Ali that his aunt and his sisters were with him. And they were imprisoned. Ya Imam al-Hadi, you were alone. Your father's head, Jawad al-A'imma's head, was not on a tray in front of you. But Sajjad had to watch as his father, Abi Abdullah's head was in a tray. And Yazid would drink alcohol and pour the alcohol in the tray. He would take a stick and he would beat the blessed lips of Imam al-Husayn, saying to him, Husayn, what beautiful lips you have, what beautiful teeth you have. Imam al-Hadi was alone, but Sajjad had his Zainab with him, had his Kulthum with him. These were greater musibahs on the heart of Imam al-Hadi. But eventually it came to the time when Mu'taz no longer wanted the Imam there. He sent poison, had the Imam poisoned. Imam suffering from the effect of the poison. There are 4 poisons in the history of Ahlul Bayt that were extremely severe. The one poison that was given to Imam al-Hassan, where the Imam began to vomit parts of his liver. Or then the poison that was given to Imam al-Rada, that his slave says, I saw the Imam coming. The distance from the house and from where the Imam was coming was only short, but I saw Imam al-Rada sit and fall 3, 4 times, multiple times until he reached the house. And then he pulled back the carpet and laid on the ground, يَتَمَلْمَلُ تَمَلْمُلَ السَّلِيمِ, and he writhed on the ground like a man bitten by a venomous snake. Or then the poison that was given to Imam al-Askari, that he was unable to hold the water in his hand, his hands were shaking, he was unable to sit up. And then the 4th severest poison was the one that was given to Imam al-Hadi. It acted fast. Imam al-Hadi gathered his family members, he gathered Imam al-Askari around him. And the Imam passed on the secrets of Imamah to his son. Imam al-Askari stood by, he cried. The soul of Imam al-Hadi left his body. They say that that moment Imam al-Askari ripped the buttons of his shirt. He began crying. He fainted upon the death of his father. Ya Imam al-Askari, you fainted seeing your father in front of you dying from the poison. But Ya Imam al-Askari, you were able to bury your father. You gave him ghusl, you gave him kafan. You lowered him into the grave. But Ya Imam al-Askari, come to Karbala and look at Sajjad. On the 13th of Muharram, when Sajjad comes, he comes to bury his father, comes to bury his loved ones. He finds Bani Asad looking around, says to them, what are you standing here for? They say, we don't know whose body is whose. Their heads have been removed. He says, let me tell you who they are. They say, who are you? He says, I am Ali ibn al-Husayn. He says, do you see that body there? That is mutilated. That is the body of my brother Ali al-Akbar. You see that young body there that has the marks of hooves on it? That is the body of my cousin Qasim. And you see that body that is in no state to be lifted, covered in arrows, and the arms separated from its bodies on the bank of Al-Qama. That is my uncle Abbas. And this body you see here, where the limbs have been removed from it, where its chest has been broken into its back, this is the body of my father Abi Abdullah. Sajjad digs the grave of his father. Ya Imam al-Hadi, you were able to lift your father, and Ya Imam al-Askari, you were able to lift your father and lower him into the grave in your own hands. But Sajjad can't lift his father. There are parts of his father scattered. Sajjad begins to scan. They say, what are you looking for? He says, I'm looking for the finger of my father. You see, when my father's body lay on the plains of Karbala and they began to loot his body, one man came, found nothing to loot. He saw the ring of my father. He tried to remove it from his hand, but the ring wouldn't come out. So he took a dagger and cut the blessed finger of my father. Sajjad finds the ring, brings it back again. Sajjad begins to scan the earth. They say to him, Imam, what are you looking for now? He says, I need to fulfill the last wasiyah of my father Abi Abdullah. Says, what was the last wasiyah? He said to me, Sajjad, when you come to bury me, make sure you bury my Ali Asghar on my chest. I'm looking for the body of my brother Ali. Sajjad finds that body that was exhumed on the 11th of Muharram at the end of the spear. He places it on the broken chest of Abu Abdullah. And now Sajjad is ready to bury. But then he turns to Bani Asad. He says, Bani Asad, can you do Sajjad a favor? They say, what is it? He says, if you have a piece of white cloth, please give it to me. They said, Mawla, the Shaheed doesn't need kafan. He says, I'm not giving my father kafan. You see, when they ran horses over his body, they broke the bones of his body. Imam Husayn's body is in no state that I, Sajjad, can lift it in one piece. I will take parts of my father, place him on this cloth, and lower the cloth into the grave. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, for the sake of this holy month and for the sake of Imam al-Hadi, Ya Allah, forgive our sins. Ya Allah, forgive the sins of our parents. Ya Allah, those of our parents that are alive, give them long lives. Those of our parents that have left this world, give them a place next to Ali Muhammad in Jannah. Oh Allah, those that are ill, give them shafa'ah. Those that are in debt, clear their debts. Ya Allah, For the sake of Imam al-Hadi, place the ihsan of Ahl al-Bayt upon us. Ya Allah, give us tawfiq to go on the ziyarat of Ali Muhammad this year and every year. Ya Allah, give us tawfiq for Hajj and Umrah this year and every year. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Yusuf Zahra and allow us to be amongst his true muntadhareen, his true awaiters, Matam Husayn.
Husayn, Husayn, Husayn. معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے نقی کا، خون روتا ہے جو چاہنے، خون روتا ہے جو چاہنے والا ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے نقی کا، پردیس میں ڈھایا گیا وہ کعبہ ایمان، پردیس میں ڈھایا گیا وہ کعبہ ایمان، ڈوبا ہوا اس درد میں، ڈوبا ہوا اس درد میں کنبہ ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے، پھر اجڑے ہیں سادات قیامت کا ہے منظر، پھر اجڑے ہیں سادات قیامت کا ہے منظر، اب سر پہ کسی کے کہاں، اب سر پہ کسی کے کہاں سایہ ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے محبوب کا زیر لحد احمد و حیدر، ہے محبوب کا زیر لحد احمد و حیدر، اور لب پہ مشیت کے بھی، اور لب پہ مشیت کے بھی نوحہ ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ، امت سے یوں پھر بنت پیمبر ہے سوالی، امت سے یوں پھر بنتے پیمبر ہیں سوالی، کیا درد ہے کیوں چہرہ یہ، کیا درد ہے کیوں چہرہ یہ نیلا ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے نقی، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ، سر پیٹتے آئے ہیں سبھی ساکن جنت، سر پیٹتے آئے ہیں سبھی ساکن جنت، غم عرش مولا پہ بھی، غم عرش مولا پہ بھی چھایا ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ، دل چاک جگر چاک ہے اس غم کی سنا سے، دل چاک جگر چاک ہے اس غم کی سنا سے، زہرا سے تو پوچھے کوئی، زہرا سے تو پوچھے کوئی کیا غم ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ، کیسے نہ اندھیروں میں جہاں غرق ہو سارا، کیسے نہ اندھیروں میں جہاں غرق ہو سارا، ہے نور ہی دنیا سے جب، ہے نور ہی دنیا سے جب اٹھتا ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے نقی کا، معصوم کے کاندھوں پہ جنازہ ہے نقی کا، یا حسین
ذات امام النقی علیہ السلام. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. اللہ اکبر. السلام علیک یا ابا الحسن علی ابن محمد الزکی الراشد النور الثاقب ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. السلام علیک یا صفی اللہ، السلام علیک یا سر اللہ، السلام علیک یا حبل اللہ، السلام علیک یا آل اللہ، السلام علیک یا خیرۃ اللہ، السلام علیک یا صفوۃ اللہ، السلام علیک یا امین اللہ، السلام علیک یا حق اللہ، السلام علیک یا حبیب اللہ، السلام علیک یا نور الانوار، السلام علیک یا زین الابرار، السلام علیک یا صلیل الاخیار، السلام علیک انصر الاطہار، السلام علیک یا حجت الرحمن، السلام علیک یا رکن الایمان، السلام علیک مولا المؤمنین، السلام علیک ولی الصالحین، السلام علیک عالم الہدا، السلام علیک حلیف التقی، السلام علیک عمود الدین، السلام علیک ابن خاتم النبیین، السلام علیک ابن سید الوسیین، السلام علیک ابن فاطمة الزہراء سیدۃ نساء العالمین، السلام علیک ایہا الامین الوفی، السلام علیک العلم الرضی، السلام علیک ایہا الزاہد التقی، السلام علیک ایہا الحجۃ علی الخلق اجمعین، السلام علیک ایہا طالع القرآن، السلام علیک ایہا المبین للحلال والحرام، السلام علیک ایہا الوسیع ولی الناس، السلام علیک ایہا الطریق الواضح، السلام علیک ایہا النجم اللائح، اشہد یا مولائی یا ابن الحسن انت حجت علی خلق و خلیفت بریت و امین ببلاد و شاہد علی عباد و اشہد انک کلمت التقوی و باب الہدا والعلوۃ الوثقی الحجت علی من فوق الارض ومن تحت الثرى. أشهد أنك المطهر من الذنوب المبر العيوب والمختص بكرامة الله محبوب بحجة الله الموهوب إنه له كلمة الله والركن الذي يلجأ إليه العباد وتحيي البلاد. أشهد يا مولاي بك أني بك بآبائك وأبنائك موقن مقر ولكم تابع في ذات نفسي وشرائع ديني وخاتمة عملي ومنقلبي ومثواي وأني ولي من ومن والاه وعدو لمن عاداه.